Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever wondered what makes someone unforgettable? Not just attractive for a moment, but the kind of person who lingers in someone's mind long after they've left the room. It isn't beauty, it isn't charm, and it isn't luck. It's three simple words. Three words that when you say them, make him replay you in his head over and over until you're the thought he can't shake. Stay with me. Because once you hear this, you'll never look at conversations the same way again. Imagine this, you're sitting across from someone you really like. The chemistry is there, the spark is undeniable, and yet a part of you is terrified. You wonder, will he keep thinking about me when I'm not around? Will I stay in his mind when life distracts him with work, friends, and everything else? That question is the quiet fear behind so many dating experiences, because we know that attraction isn't just about what happens in the moment, it's about what lingers after. And the truth is, if you can tap into the part of someone that makes you unforgettable, you don't just capture his attention, you stay in his thoughts long after the conversation ends. Now, most people approach this the wrong way. They try to make themselves more memorable by exaggerating, performing, or bending over backward to impress. They think if they just look good enough, act witty enough, or show how independent they are, that will do the trick. But men don't remember you because you performed for them. They remember you because you made them feel something unique. And that's where these three magic words come into play. They're simple, but they create the kind of emotional pull that keeps a man hooked on you in his mind. The first word is imagine. It's one of the most powerful words in language because it bypasses logic and goes straight to emotion. When you ask a man to imagine something with you, you're not just talking to him, you're inviting him into a shared reality. Instead of saying, I love going to Italy, you say, imagine us walking through the streets of Rome, getting lost and finding the best little pizza place. Suddenly, he's not just hearing about you, he's picturing himself beside you. You've made him part of the story. And when you're part of someone's story, you're not easily forgotten. Think about it. Imagination is where our mind wanders when we're alone. It's where we go when we daydream. If he's imagining himself with you, that means when he's at work or at the gym or lying in bed at night, you're not just another woman he spoke to, you're a possibility he's living in his head. That's the difference between a fleeting conversation and a lasting memory. The second word is remember. Why is this word so powerful? Because it anchors you to an experience he already values. When you say, remember how we laughed about that waiter who kept getting the orders wrong, you're not just recalling a moment, you're reminding him how much fun he had in your presence. You're taking an emotion that already exists and stamping yourself on it. And the more you do that, the more he begins to associate his happiest, most effortless feelings with you. What most people don't realize is that attraction is not about constant novelty. It's about creating emotional reference points. When he remembers you, he remembers the way he felt with you. And if he felt light, fun, confident, or even deeply understood, those feelings replay in his mind like his favorite song. People don't get addicted to the song because of the notes. They get addicted because of how the notes make them feel. You're the melody that makes his day better just by coming to mind. The third word is because. This one is sneaky because it doesn't sound romantic at first, but it's magic, and disguise. The word because gives everything you say meaning. If you tell a man, I love talking to you, it's nice, but it floats away. If you say, I love talking to you because you actually listen and make me feel heard, now you've attached weight to your words. You've told him not just what you like, but why. And that why sticks. Here's why it matters. Everyone craves significance. Deep down, we all want to know that we matter in a specific way. When you use because, you're giving him that gift. You're saying, this isn't generic, this is about you. That's the kind of thing he replays in his mind when he's thinking about you later. He'll catch himself smiling, remembering the way you said it, wondering if you meant even more than you let on. That's how obsession begins. Not through grand gestures, but through tiny, precise ways you show someone their unique value. Put those three words together, imagine, remember, because, and you have a blueprint for staying in his thoughts non-stop. Imagine creates a future he wants to step into. Remember ties you to the best feelings from the past. because gives meaning to the present moment. You've covered every part of the emotional timeline, what was, what is, and what could be. And when you connect across time like that, you're not just a fleeting crush, you're a presence that feels inevitable. But here's the thing, this isn't about manipulation. It's not about tricking someone into thinking about you. It's about realizing the power of your words and using them with intention. So many women underestimate their impact. They think they need to wait for a man to decide how much attention to give them, when in reality, the way they speak, the way they frame moments, the way they choose their words, these are all tools for creating the emotional connection that men crave but rarely admit. When you say imagine, you're not forcing a vision, you're offering an invitation. When you say remember, you're not clinging to the past, you're building a pattern of Joe. And when you say because, you're not inflating his ego, you're giving depth to the connection. And men aren't used to that. Most conversations they have are surface level. Most compliments they get are vague. So when you bring this kind of intentionality, it feels different. Different is what makes you unforgettable. Let me paint a picture. Imagine you're texting him after a date. Instead of, I had fun, you say, I had fun because you made me laugh so hard when you told that ridiculous story about your dog. Instead of, we should hang out again, you say, imagine us doing that same hike, but this time bringing snacks and making a picnic at the top. Instead of silence the next day, you say, remember how competitive you got during that game of pool? I still think I let you win. In each case, you've taken something ordinary and turned it into a thought he'll keep revisiting. This is the art of staying in someone's mind. It's not about being perfect. It's about being specific. It's about attaching emotion to your presence in a way that makes him crave more. Because here's the truth. Men don't obsess over perfection. They obsess over how you make them feel. If you can make him feel alive, playful, valued, and excited about what's next, he won't just think about you. He'll find himself planning ways to get closer, to create more of those moments, to see what else you can unlock together. And once you understand that, you realize something even more empowering. It's not about chasing someone else's attention, it's about realizing the influence you already have. You don't need to be louder, prettier, or more impressive. You just need to be intentional. Use the words that paint pictures, anchor memories, and give meaning. Use the words that make him see you, not as another woman he dated, but as the woman he can't stop imagining himself with, the woman whose presence lingers in his thoughts, the woman who, without even trying too hard, became unforgettable. And when you step into that power, something shifts inside you. Suddenly, you're no longer the one waiting for his text, staring at your phone, wondering if he's going to call. You become the one who knows, without doubt, that you've left an impression he can't easily shake. Because the real magic isn't in hoping he thinks about you. It's in knowing that the way you show up, the way you speak, and the way you connect guarantees that you're not just another fleeting thought. You become the thought, you become the mental movie playing in the back of his mind, even when he's in a crowded room. This is why intention matters so much. Words are not just sounds we throw into the air, they're emotional triggers. When you attach an emotion to a word, you create a memory. And memories are sticky. People don't replay moments that were flat. They replay the ones that had color, the ones that made them feel, the ones that gave them a taste of something they didn't even know they were craving. If you can tap into that, you stop being a face in the crowd and start being the person who quietly sets the standard for what intimacy feels like. Think about it in your own life. There are probably people you've met who were objectively attractive, funny, or impressive, but they didn't linger in your mind. Then there are others, maybe not even the most obvious choice, who for some reason you couldn't stop thinking about. They said something small that stuck with you. They made you laugh in a way that felt effortless. They looked at you with a kind of curiosity that made you feel seen. That's not coincidence, that's impact. And you have that same power when you learn to wield it deliberately. Now let's go deeper into how these three words actually work in practice, because it's not enough to know them, you need to embody them. Imagine works best when you attach it to an experience that feels playful, adventurous, or intimate. The point isn't to make him imagine something grandiose like a yacht in the Mediterranean, unless that's authentically your life. It's to make him imagine the kind of moments that make him feel alive. It might be as simple as, imagine us staying up too late, watching terrible movies and laughing at how bad they are. That's not glamorous, but it's human, it's relatable. And it's the kind of thing he'll picture himself doing with you when he's lying in bed, smiling at the ceiling. Remember is most powerful when it's tied to laughter, vulnerability, or victory. If you can remind him of a moment when he felt triumphant around you, like beating you at a game or impressing you with a story, he'll relive that high every time you bring it up. If you remind him of a moment when you both laughed uncontrollably, he'll crave that ease again. And if you remind him of a vulnerable moment where he opened up and you listened without judgment, he'll feel safer with you than with anyone else. Safety combined with excitement is irresistible. And then there's because. This word is your way of making him feel significant. But here's the key, don't just hand out empty affirmations. Men, like anyone else, can sense when you're saying something generic. If you say, I like you because you're nice, it falls flat. But if you say, I like you because you pay attention to little details most people miss, now he feels seen in a way most people overlook. Specificity is the heartbeat of connection. It's the difference between someone thinking she likes me and someone thinking she gets me. And when a man feels understood by you in a way he doesn't feel understood by others, he will replay that feeling endlessly. Let's imagine a scenario. You've gone on 2 or 3 dates with this man, and you're wondering how to deepen the connection without seeming pushy. He texts you something funny that happened at work, and instead of just replying LOL, you say, imagine if we worked together, you'd be getting us both in trouble for laughing during meetings. Instantly, you've taken his little story and placed yourself inside it. You've created a shared world where the two of you exist together. And whether he admits it or not, that tiny shift makes him smile and think, yeah, I can see that. Or let's say you're reflecting on the last date. You could send a message saying, that was fun. But that doesn't stick. Instead, you say, remember when we got caught in the rain walking to the car? You looked ridiculous trying to cover your hair with your jacket. Now, not only have you reminded him of a moment, you've reactivated the playfulness of it. Chances are he'll laugh out loud when he reads it, and that's the moment you slip into his day again, even though you're not there. Then, the next time you're together, you lean into because. Instead of saying you're great, you say, I like being around you because you make even boring moments feel fun. That lands, that penetrates, that becomes the sentence that replays in his head when he's driving home. He's thinking, wow, she actually feels something unique with me. And that thought is addictive. But here's the deeper truth underneath all of this. When you use these words, you're not just making him think about you, you're actually revealing more of yourself. You're showing him your imagination, your ability to create shared experiences, your attentiveness to memories, and your capacity to give meaning to moments. You're letting him see the kind of partner you would be. That's why it works. It's not a trick. It's authenticity expressed with precision. The mistake so many people make is believing they need to hide their intentions to stay mysterious. They think being vague is what creates intrigue. But vagueness doesn't create obsession, it creates confusion. What really Dr. AWS someone in is clarity with a touch of playfulness. It's showing them enough of your personality, your humor, your warmth, and your depth that they can't help but think about what it would be like to have more of it. Mystery doesn't come from being distant, it comes from being layered, and these words reveal layers. Another important piece is energy. Words are powerful, but the energy behind them is what makes them magnetic. If you say imagine in a flat, disconnected way, it falls dead. But if you say it with a sparkle in your eye, a smile that suggests you're already enjoying the fantasy, it pulls him in. If you say remember with a tone that makes it feel like an inside joke only the two of you share, he feels chosen. If you say because with sincerity in your voice, it resonates far deeper than if you throw it out casually. Energy amplifies words into experiences. And the beauty is you don't need to force it. You don't need to rehearse lines or try too hard. All you need to do is slow down enough to notice the opportunities. Opportunities to paint a picture. Opportunities to call back a memory. Opportunities to explain why something matters to you. Most people rush through conversations on autopilot, saying the same predictable things. But when you're intentional, you elevate ordinary interactions into moments that linger. This is what makes someone unforgettable. It's not about the dramatic gestures, the perfect Instagram photos, or the flawless dates. It's about the subtle art of leaving fingerprints on someone's emotions. It's about being the person who can take the mundane and make it magical. Because when you do that, he's not just thinking about what you did together, he's thinking about who you are. And here's where the real confidence comes in. When you master this, you no longer sit in fear wondering, will he think about me? You know he will. Not because you're desperate for it, but because you've shown up in a way that naturally commands it. You've given him a taste of something rare. And once someone gets a taste of rare, they can't go back to ordinary. They compare every new interaction to the way you made them feel. And without even trying, you've set a bar. So the next time you're with him, notice the little moments where you can slip these words in. Notice when you can spark his imagination, anchor a memory, or attach meaning. Notice how he reacts, how his eyes light up, how his smile lingers, how his texts get just a little more thoughtful afterward. That's the evidence that you've entered his mental space in a way that's not going away anytime soon. And when you start to notice those reactions, it becomes clear that you're no longer playing the same game you once did. You're not operating from the place of insecurity that whispers, what if he forgets about me? Instead, you're operating from a place of quiet certainty that says, of course he'll remember me. How could he not? That certainty doesn't come from arrogance. It comes from knowing you've created a unique experience for him, one that goes beyond the surface. This is the shift so many people overlook. They think being unforgettable is about standing out in some loud, dramatic way. But it's not about being louder than the rest. It's about being more deeply felt. And the reason these three words work so beautifully is because they're not about external fireworks. They're about planting seeds in his imagination, his memory, and his emotions. Seeds that grow long after you've left the room. Seeds that sprout when he least expects it. When he's brushing his teeth, driving home, or lying awake at night. That's when you appear, not because you forced yourself into his thoughts, but because you've become part of the emotional landscape he now carries with him. Let's talk about why this matters beyond attraction. Because yes, you want him to think about you, but you also want more than that. You want consistency, connection, and eventually commitment. And the only way those things happen is when someone feels like the connection with you is irreplaceable. If you become interchangeable with every other woman he meets, his thoughts about you will fade. But when you show him that you are the person who can make him feel the way no one else can, his mind keeps circling back. It's not just she's attractive, it's she's the one who makes life more colorful. That's the level where real bonds begin. Think about the role of imagine here. It's not just a playful tool, it's a vision-building tool. You're helping him see a future where he feels more alive because you're in it. That's why people can't stop thinking about certain relationships. They remember the vision that person helped them see. It doesn't matter if the relationship was short-lived. If someone painted a picture of life that felt richer, that vision sticks. So every time you invite him to imagine with you, you're building a frame around a future that has you in it. And frames are powerful. They make us want to fill in the rest of the picture. Now consider remember. This isn't just about reminiscing. It's about anchoring him emotionally to the best moments he's had with you. Think about it. Our brains don't always remember events accurately, but they do remember how we felt. If you remind him of the laughter, the thrill, the intimacy, he doesn't just recall the memory, he re-experiences the feeling. That's why you've had moments where a song or a smell instantly transported you back to a time in your life. That's what remember does in conversation. It becomes the emotional equivalent of a song lyric that takes him back every single time. And then there's because. It doesn't just give depth to the present, it creates significance. We live in a world where so much feels disposable. People swap us sound. IP past each other, conversations blur, and everyone is searching for something meaningful in the noise. When you use because, you're cutting through that noise. You're saying, this isn't just nice, it matters, you matter. That's the kind of statement that burns into someone's memory. It's the reason he replays your words when he's alone. It's the reason he can't stop wondering if there's more underneath what you said. This is how you move from being a fleeting thought to being an obsession, not in the unhealthy sense, but in the way where he can't help but feel pulled toward you. And that pull doesn't come from being someone you're not. It comes from leaning into the very parts of you that are genuine, but expressed with intentionality. The truth is, you already have the qualities that make someone unforgettable. What these words do is amplify those qualities so that they don't get lost in the noise of ordinary interactions. Now imagine the ripple effect of this. He's out with his friends and someone asks him about you. Without even realizing it, he lights up as he talks. He recalls the little moments you've created with him, and his friends notice the difference in his tone. They can hear it. That's how deep it goes. Your presence affects not only his thoughts, but how he carries himself in the world. That's what happens when you tap into emotion rather than performance. You're not trying to impress, you're inspiring him to feel. And here's another layer. When he thinks about you non-stop, it's not just because of what you've said, but because of the space you've created. These words don't just stick in his mind, they open up a space where he can dream, laugh, and feel valued. That space becomes addictive. Everyone craves a place where they feel alive, light-hearted, and important. You become that place. And when you are that place, he doesn't just want to think about you, he wants to come back to you again and again. Of course, some people worry that being this intentional might feel forced, but that's only true if you're trying to use these words as tactics rather than expressions. The point isn't to fake imagination, memory, or meaning, it's to highlight them when they're real. If you genuinely see a moment worth remembering, say it. If you genuinely want to build a vision of something fun together, share it. If you genuinely value something about him, explain why. Authenticity is the engine. The words are simply the vehicle. Without authenticity, the words are empty. With authenticity, they're unforgettable. And this is where the deeper lesson lies. The way you communicate isn't just about making him think about you, it's about elevating every relationship in your life. When you start to see how powerful it is to invite people into your imagination, to anchor them to positive memories, and to give meaning to your words, you realize this isn't just about romance, it's about influence, it's about leadership, it's about leaving a mark on every person you encounter. The man you like isn't the only one who will think about you non-stop. Friends, colleagues, and family will too, because you've learned how to engage with people in a way that makes them feel something lasting. And when you become that kind of person, your energy changes. You stop chasing validation because you realize you already have the ability to create impact. You stop worrying about whether you're enough because you understand that being unforgettable isn't about being perfect, it's about being intentional. You stop fearing rejection because you know that if someone doesn't think about you after all this, it's not because you weren't powerful enough. It's because they weren't the right audience for the masterpiece you are. The beauty of all this is that it becomes effortless over time. At first you might consciously think, how can I use imagine, remember, or because here? But soon it flows naturally. It becomes the way you speak, the way you connect. And when it becomes second nature, you're no longer strategizing. You're simply being yourself at your highest level of expression. That's when you become magnetic without even trying. That's when people walk away from you and feel a pang of longing they can't quite explain. That's when you occupy someone's thoughts, not just for hours, but for days, weeks, and months. So picture it, you leave a date, and instead of sitting by the phone, you're smiling to yourself because you know exactly what just happened. You painted pictures, you triggered memories, you gave meaning, and even if he doesn't text right away, you know that somewhere in his day, he'll pause and you'll be there. In the middle of his meeting, in the middle of his workout, in the quiet moments before sleep, you'll appear. Not because you begged for space in his mind, but because you earned it by creating experiences words alone rarely achieve. And that's when everything changes, because once you understand how to stay in someone's mind, you stop needing to fight for space in their life. You stop asking, will he remember me? And start knowing he can't not. You stop chasing attention and start commanding it. And that right there is the power you've had all along. You're just finally learning how to use it. And when you truly step into that awareness, life begins to look different. You no longer measure your worth by how much attention someone gives you. Instead, you measure it by the impact you know you're capable of creating. You realize that being unforgettable is not about trying harder or doing more. It's about being intentional in the smallest of ways. The tiniest shift in how you communicate can ripple out into his mind in ways you can't even predict. That's the beauty of it. Subtlety becomes your superpower. Think about how most people interact. Conversations are often transactional. How was your day? Fine. What did you do? Not much. These are exchanges that evaporate seconds after they happen. But when you add when you sprinkle in a little imagination, a little nostalgia, a little meaning, you elevate the conversation into something that lingers. He's not walking away from a forgettable back and forth. He's walking away from an experience. And experiences live on. They replay. They echo. Now picture this. He's sitting with his friends after work, half listening to whatever they're saying, and suddenly his mind drifts back to something you told him. Maybe it was the way you laughed when you reminded him of that ridiculous moment you both shared. Maybe it was the playful way you invited him to imagine a future adventure. Maybe it was the sincerity in your voice when you told him why you liked a certain quality about him. It hits him out of nowhere, and suddenly you're there in the room with him, even though you're miles away. That's the kind of mental presence that separates you from every other person he's spoken to that week. And here's the secret. When you're in someone's mind like that, they start to crave more of you. Not because you begged for it, not because you demanded it, but because you gave them a feeling they don't want to lose. This is the kind of pull that doesn't just make someone think about you, but makes them reach out, make plans, and prioritize you without needing to be reminded. Because people always gravitate back to the source of the emotions they value most. But let's go even deeper. Imagine is more than a playful tool. It's a way to test compatibility without directly asking for it. When you say, imagine us cooking together and burning half the food, you're not just being light-hearted, you're observing how he responds. Does he laugh and lean into the vision? Does he play along and build on it? If he does, you're learning that he shares your sense of humor, your ability to laugh at imperfection, your openness to creating fun out of chaos. You're not only staying in his mind, you're gathering data about how aligned you are. That's powerful because now you're not just unforgettable, you're intentional about who you invest in. Remember, 2 reveals more than it seems. When you remind someone of a shared moment, you see whether their face lights up, whether they engage with the memory, whether they let themselves feel it again. If he brushes it off or changes the subject, that tells you something about his ability or inability to value the connection you're offering. But if he leans in, if he smiles, if he can't resist adding his own perspective, then you know he's reliving the moment with you. That's where bonds are strengthened. Not only are you anchoring yourself to his good feelings, you're also testing whether he can hold space for them with you. And because this is where you separate yourself from almost everyone else he meets. Compliments without reasons are like balloons without strings. They float away. But when you attach a reason, when you show that you've paid attention, you create a tether. You ground the compliment in reality, and in doing so, you make it undeniable. When you say, "I like talking to you because you make the world feel less heavy," he can't forget that. It's not abstract, it's visceral. He knows exactly what you mean, and he knows exactly when he's made you feel that way. That kind of clarity is impossible to shake. But here's what makes this truly transformative. When you begin to master this way of connecting, you stop looking for reassurance that you're enough. You already know you are, because the way you communicate becomes proof. The impact you leave on people is proof. You don't need someone else to validate you when you can see with your own eyes how they respond, how they light up, how they keep coming back. That shift in your energy is what makes you even more magnetic. Confidence isn't about pretending you don't care, it's about knowing you don't need to chase. And that changes the dynamic entirely, because suddenly you're no longer the one waiting around to be chosen. You're the one deciding who gets to stay in your orbit. You're no longer trying to force someone to think about you. You're observing who can't help but do it on their own. And when you come from that place, everything feels lighter. You're not over-analyzing texts, not stressing about timing, not questioning your worth. You're simply being, and that being is more than enough. Now imagine how this looks months down the line. Maybe you're in a relationship, maybe you're still dating, but either way, the connection hasn't dulled. Why? Because you've built it on a foundation of imagination, memory, and meaning. Every new adventure you go on, you frame with imagine. Every shared laugh you reinforce with remember. Every special quality you see in him, you express with because. And because of that, he doesn't just think about you in the beginning, he keeps thinking about you. You've created a cycle of emotional reinforcement that only grows stronger with time. And let's not forget the power this gives you outside of romance. Once you realize how unforgettable you can be, you'll notice how people at work respond differently to you. You'll notice how friends look forward to your presence even more. You'll notice how strangers lean in when you talk. Why? Because you're no longer just communicating facts, you're communicating feelings. And feelings are what people carry with them. The truth is, most people spend their lives trying to be memorable by standing out in obvious ways, by being the loudest, the boldest, the most impressive. But the people who truly leave a mark are the ones who make others feel something they can't forget. That's the real magic. It's quiet, it's subtle, it's powerful, and it's available to you right now. So as you move forward, pay attention to the little opportunities. Notice the times when you can slip in a playful imagine that paints him into your world. Notice the moments when you can revive a shared memory with remember, bringing back the joy of it all. Notice when you can add weight to your words with because, transforming a simple compliment into something unforgettable. Do this not as a performance, but as an authentic expression of who you are. Because when you do, you'll realize something extraordinary. You've been unforgettable all along. These words simply give shape to it. And the more you practice this, the more natural it becomes. Soon, you won't even realize you're doing it. You'll just find yourself speaking in a way that naturally draws people in, that naturally leaves them thinking about you, that naturally makes them want more. And in that space, you'll discover that the real magic isn't just in making someone think about you non-stop. It's in realizing that you already had the ability to create that kind of impact. You just had to learn how to unlock it